Imagine a world where one half is locked in eternal scorching daylight while the other remains trapped in frozen darkness. Between these two extremes lies a thin, habitable ring, a twilight zone where life might cling to existence. This is the reality of an eyeball planet. Unlike Earth, which rotates freely, an eyeball planet is tidally locked to its star, meaning one side always faces the light while the other is in perpetual shadow. The result? A planet that looks eerily like a giant eye from space, hence the name. But what would it actually be like to stand on the surface of such a world? Let's start with the day side, a scorching, barren wasteland where the heat never subsides. If the planet orbits close to a red dwarf star, this side could be an inferno with boiling oceans and molten rock. Winds might whip across the surface, carrying dust and debris toward the cooler twilight zone. If the atmosphere is thick enough, massive storm systems could form, creating never-ending hurricanes near the transition between light and dark. But step into the night side, and you'd enter a world of perpetual darkness. With no direct sunlight, temperatures would plummet to hundreds of degrees below freezing. Any water here would be locked in thick sheets of ice, creating a frozen landscape stretching as far as the eye can see. The only sources of light? Perhaps volcanic activity or eerie bioluminescent life forms, assuming anything can survive in such extreme cold. The real action, however, happens in the twilight zone, the narrow band where day and night collide. Here, conditions might be just right for liquid water, making it the most habitable region of the planet. Alien ecosystems could thrive, with strange plants adapted to dim, reddish light and creatures that navigate the endless dusk. The air might be thick with mist, as warm winds from the dayside mix with cold currents from the night. But life here wouldn't be easy. Massive storms could rage, temperature shifts would be extreme, and survival would depend on adapting to a world with no true day or night. Could humans live on an eyeball planet? With the right technology, possibly. Settlements would have to be built in the twilight zone, harnessing energy from both the hot and cold extremes. Advanced climate control would be essential to regulate unpredictable weather, and, if intelligent, alien civilizations exist on an eyeball planet. Their way of life would be completely different from ours. Their entire history, culture, and understanding of time would be shaped by the fact that their world never turns. But one thing is certain: if you ever set foot on an eyeball planet, you'd be witnessing one of the most bizarre and extreme environments the universe has to offer. Would you dare to explore it? Imagine standing on the surface of an eyeball planet, a world where one half is locked in never-ending daylight and the other is trapped in an eternal frozen night. The only livable area? A thin, habitable strip of land caught between extremes, where alien life may struggle to survive in an endless twilight. Unlike Earth, which rotates freely, an eyeball planet is tidally locked to its star. One side of the planet constantly faces the sun, while the other remains in permanent darkness. From space, it resembles a giant staring eye, hence the name. But what would it actually be like to live on such a planet? What challenges would settlers face? And could intelligent civilizations evolve in this bizarre environment? The extreme sides of an eyeball planet. The first thing you'd notice on an eyeball planet is the harsh contrast between hemispheres. On the day side, the sun never moves from its position in the sky. If the planet orbits close to a red dwarf star, this region could be a scorching desert with surface temperatures high enough to melt rock. If the atmosphere is thick enough, the greenhouse effect could turn this region into a runaway oven, similar to Venus. If water exists, it would likely have boiled away, leaving behind vast salt flats or dried-up ocean basins. The terrain might be shaped by extreme winds, carrying dust and sand toward the cooler regions. Volcanic activity could be more frequent here, driven by the planet's internal heat. Now, step into the night side, and you'd enter a completely different world, a frozen wasteland of perpetual darkness. With no sunlight to provide warmth, temperatures could drop to hundreds of degrees below freezing. The air itself might crystallize into frozen clouds, falling as snow-like particles. Oceans on this side would be locked under thick sheets of ice, potentially miles deep. But below the surface, things might not be so lifeless. If the planet has internal heat from geothermal activity, subsurface oceans could exist, similar to the icy moons Europa and Enceladus in our own solar system. These hidden oceans could be one of the best places for alien life to exist. The Twilight Zone. A place for life? The Twilight Zone, or the Terminator Line, is the most habitable area of an eyeball planet. Here, temperatures might be mild enough for liquid water to exist, making it the best place for life to thrive. But life here wouldn't resemble anything we know on Earth. The dim, reddish light of a red dwarf star would create an eerie, permanent dusk. Plants would likely evolve to maximize light absorption, appearing dark purple, red, or even black. Alien. Animals, if they exist, would have to adapt to an environment without a traditional day-night cycle. Instead of sleeping at night and waking during the day, they might follow completely different biological rhythms, relying on wind patterns, temperature shifts, or magnetic fields to navigate. Some creatures might live in the warmest parts of the Twilight Zone, venturing slightly into the dayside to bask in the heat before retreating to safety. Others might prefer the cooler edges, closer to the frozen night, where they could take advantage of ice and snow for water. If the planet has oceans, the Twilight coastline could be a hotspot for life. Massive storms could form over warm waters, pushing currents into the frozen side, where icebergs might drift in and out of existence. But what if an intelligent species evolved in this environment? What would civilization look like on an eyeball? Planet, civilization on an eyeball planet. An advanced civilization on an eyeball planet would face challenges unlike anything humans have ever encountered. Without a rotating sun, their concept of time would be completely different. Instead of measuring time in days and nights, they might use wind patterns, temperature shifts, or the movement of distant moons to mark the passage of time. With only a narrow band of habitable land, resources would be limited. The civilization might have to develop advanced methods of water collection, possibly melting ice from the night side or extracting moisture from the air. They might use massive wind farms to generate power, harnessing the constant high-speed winds that blow between the hot and cold zones. Architecture would need to be storm-resistant. Settlements might be built underground or into natural rock formations, offering protection from the violent weather. Some might even construct floating cities above the more turbulent regions using balloons or anti-gravity technology to remain stable. If this civilization advanced far enough, they could develop ways to control their environment. Gigantic mirrors in space could reflect sunlight onto the night side, melting parts of the ice and expanding the habitable zone. They might also build artificial energy stations to harness the heat difference between the hemispheres, creating a sustainable power. But if an eyeball planet civilization ever looked up at the sky and saw a world like Earth, it would seem incredibly strange to them. A planet where the sun moves across the sky, where half the world isn't locked in place. To them, our world might seem unpredictable, chaotic, and even terrifying. Could humans live on an eyeball planet? If humanity ever attempted to colonize an eyeball planet, survival would depend on choosing the right location. Settlements would need to be carefully placed within the Twilight Zone, near stable sources of water. Technology would be crucial. Colonists would need advanced climate control to handle the unpredictable storms and temperature swings. They might have to build structures designed to trap and store heat from the warm side while insulating against the extreme cold of the night side. One major challenge would be the lack of a normal day-night cycle. Human bodies are adapted to a 24-hour rhythm, so living in permanent dusk could lead to sleep disorders and mental health challenges. Colonists might rely on artificial lighting schedules to simulate a normal cycle and maintain their biological clocks. Radiation would also be a serious issue. Many eyeball planets orbit red dwarf stars, which are known for their intense stellar flares. Without proper shielding, colonists could be exposed to deadly levels of radiation. Future settlers might need genetic modifications or specialized habitats to survive long-term. But despite the challenges, an eyeball planet could be one of the best places for humanity to establish a permanent off-world settlement. Red dwarf stars are incredibly long-lived, meaning that a planet in their habitable zone could remain stable for trillions of years, far longer than Earth will exist. If we ever expand beyond our solar system, these strange alien worlds could be the future of human civilization. Final thoughts: eyeball planets are some of the most fascinating exoplanets in the universe. Their extreme environments, scorching deserts, frozen wastelands, and misty twilight zones create a world unlike anything in our solar system. If intelligent life exists on one of these planets, it would be shaped by forces beyond our imagination. Their entire culture, biology, and understanding of time would be completely different from ours. And if we ever discover a real eyeball planet orbiting a nearby red dwarf, it might not just be an empty, lifeless rock. It could be home to something or someone watching us from the twilight. Would you ever set foot on an eyeball planet? Let me know in the comments below.